Right, so I know you're excited because it's another ERP thing. That's what this is all about. So I do appreciate you coming because I know everybody's got a lot to do. And a couple of people did, they're like, do I really have to come to this thing? And the answer is yes. Because we have a communications plan, actually, and this is part of it. Every 3 months, I'm going to be doing an update like this, also presenting to council. And then in between that, there's various newsletters and emails and things that go out. So if I don't do it, I wouldn't be doing my job. And thanks for coming. So I'm going to get started, ERP. I want to go over the timeline first. I know you've seen this timeline probably quite a few times now. We had a couple of changes on it. We extended the RFP release out about 2 weeks. And we've also given an extension on the proposals being due. So the RFP went out on the 16th of April, and the proposals, the written proposals, are due back on the 14th of May. So that small orange bar up there, I don't know if you see that, that's when the selection committee are going to be reviewing the written proposals. I'm hoping we get about at least 6. They're all a couple of 100 pages each. So the selection committee are going to be busy. And in between that, these are just the major things that are going to be occurring, and I'm just going to point out the big ones. And the next big one after that, once the selection committee review those proposals, they'll pick 3 vendors to go forward for actual software demonstrations. So then 3 vendors will come here in July for 3 weeks, 1 vendor each week, and the selection committee will sit here for 3 days each week and watch the demos. And they'll cover in great detail finance and HR stuff that they're going to be showing us, and the selection committee will be here for that. So they have anyone who's on the selection committee has got a lot to do coming up, and not just for those 2 events. We have a whole series of meetings in between those major things for them to get together and like evaluate the proposals and have meetings to talk about scoring and everything. So there's a lot of things that they're doing in addition to these bars here. So hopefully, though, after the demonstrations, then that blue smaller bar, and also you can come and watch the demonstrations too. So some of it you might not want to see because it probably bore you to death nearly, depending on what your interest is. So on the first day, it's more general, and they give an overview of the company and a bit of an introduction, and then the next day is very tightly scheduled. They have to follow a script. They can't just show us anything they want. They're going to have to follow our script and what we want to see, which is in alignment with our scope of the project. So there's no point wasting our day showing us a whole thing that we're never going to get. So we want them to do what we want to see, and then people will be invited in. So we have process improvement teams. You may or may not know that. Hopefully most of you do, working on certain functions. And so we'll invite those teams in on the relevant parts of the script. So you might get invitations during that time frame if you're on a PIT team to come in and watch the demo, because I think you're all getting a really good idea now of some of the things you'll be looking out for, what you want out of the system, even if it's not your thing. I mean, there's people in the purchasing team who are learning stuff about probably more than they ever wish they knew about the back end of purchasing, but it's kind of important that we all know how things work. So they'll come in and watch part of that demo. And then we will select, then there's 2 flags up there called on-site discovery. From the demos, we'll pick 2 vendors who will come in, and we'll have a discovery day each with them and kind of put them under an interrogation light and grill them and poke them around a lot to really see what they're made of and if they're going to work for us. And they get a chance to ask us questions too, but they don't get to poke us around. So, and then after that, we will elevate one of them onto contract negotiations. And so that could go on for a couple of months. You can imagine this will be a really big and cumbersome kind of contract with a lot of clauses and terms and conditions. So that can go back and forth, especially with some of the big vendors, because you can't just go and tell them, hey, we don't like that term, because they're going to go back to their people and have to have a big conversation about it. So that's where those things can start getting a bit long-winded. But anyway, we hope to do the award to council in beginning of December, to present the award to council. And then at that point in time, the software vendors will start probably coming on site and talking to us, and the reality, if it doesn't already seem real now, will be very apparent then when they start showing up, which is an exciting time, because you can actually start building the system then and getting into things. So does anybody have any questions about this timeline at all before I move on? And there's a lot of other items as well. I just don't have them on here because this is the stuff that most people would need to know about. But I'm happy to answer a question any other time if you think of something.
Are they going to go into building also when they do those?
No.
No. So with the finance and the
HR for this particular piece. But it doesn't mean that you guys won't get a demo and look at software for your solution for the building. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute too. So, whoops. Okay, so here's this ERP selection committee. I do want you to know who's on this committee. And each one of those people represents a different area from the city. So we got Tracy from finance, Jim from purchasing, Heather from HR, Julia Wiggins, Public Utilities and Public Works. Tell me if I get anything wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Susan from Parks, Aaron from Police, Krista, who's over in Fire now, but she also has a good eye on the community development side of things too. And then Jennifer Roberson from Community Development and Corey from IT. So even though you're not, the demos won't be covering, you have a representative on this because this takes me on to my next point actually. And just to pick on Melanie a little bit, when she came to, we had some informal vendor meet and greets where they came in and showed us a little bit of what they had to offer. The vendors came in and gave us like an hour, hey, here's some of our cool stuff. And Melanie was like, well, none of that's really my stuff, that's HR and finance. But when we talked about it a bit more, she, you are an employee and you use the financial system. So everything that we do is based off a financial transaction really, and also we're all employees, we're all going to get paid and use the system and ask for leave and everything. So even though it might not be your specific area of work, this still is a big thing for all of us to be interested in because we're going to be using it every day. And you're going to be in and out of there doing all your stuff. So, I don't want you to think that it wouldn't affect you. Sorry, Melanie. We'll hash it out later. So this goes back to like the scope of the project. So I hope you can see that. I tried not to do too small writing. But mainly it's chart of accounts and general ledger financial reporting, project and grant management, procure to pay, accounts payable budgeting, accounts receivable and billing, capital asset management and human resources and payroll. So these are the main core functions that we're going out for to get our systems standing up to start with. And it doesn't mean other things won't come later, but anyone who's already involved in this probably already realizes how massive this is. So to go any bigger than this right now, we wouldn't be able to do it anyway. It's just too much. So let's get the main core rolling and then we can work on the other things as well. Does anyone have any questions about that scope of this project? And later on Tim Berman is on the ERP steering committee, and we had a lot of conversations about because they're looking for a solution for community development too. So they might choose the same vendor that we have if that vendor has a community development solution, but if they don't, he can go out and choose whatever works for their department as well, and we'll have it all integrated, and it might be one vendor, it might be a different vendor. So we'll be working on that in a couple of weeks. He already has a big list of requirements and everything so that you guys have been working on for a long time. So that's not being left out, and Tim is fully on board with this approach. So these are some of the vendors who've been interested in what we're doing, which is good. So there's some big ones up there, and some you know Tyler already. They've been in. Superior is our current vendor. They're on the left are actual software vendors who supply the software, and on the right they're called implementation partners. So what this means is that some of these guys on the left, like Oracle, Workday, there's another one too, Microsoft, somehow I missed them off. They don't install their own software. They don't come and do that themselves. They work with a partner. And the partner is good because they know more about the business side. They know the software as well, but they know more about what you do very specifically. So we had quite a few. We had a pre-bid conference on Monday, and there was quite a lot of interest. We had some good vendors on the phone, and I'm happy with that because I want us to have a lot of choices in who we might be able to look at for some of these solutions. So I know it's annoying sometimes, this ERP stuff. So I wanted to remind you of some of the things that you said because when I first came here, I sort of interviewed some department heads and some other people, and so, you know, the general theme was it was slow manual processes and too many approvals, thresholds too low, hard to get data out of the system, and dirty data. Now, the ERP system isn't going to fix all of those things, but the process of implementing it, we might be able to fix some. We're already looking at some of the items. To go into a bit more detail, you know, some said purchasing process is very slow and cumbersome, and that's not it's not on Jim and David, it's just the whole system and the process and procedure. It slows things down. There's some holdups there. The system isn't user-friendly. People felt they needed more training. The security, there are concerns around the security and who has what roles and what they can have access to. Again, if you don't manage that, that could pop up as an issue in the future. And this is not any kind of negative, you know, pointing fingers at anybody now. Things happen. This has been 28 years. Things aren't perfect, and things grow and evolve out of shape sometimes. So we'll get it back in shape. Data cleanup, and police and fire were having problems integrating with ExecuTime. So, you know, now I know it's annoying when some of your staff have to go to things and there's a lot of meetings, but I just wanted to remind everybody the pain that you have with the current system too about getting things done, and that's why we're doing this. So that kind of goes on to the next slide. So the good thing is, all right, let's go on to some good stuff. We'll switch it up. So you said that there were good people here, were motivated and excited and ready for change, which I've noticed, and that's true. I'm not going to deny that one at all. Strong executive support from the city manager. He's very passionate about this project, I'm sure you've already seen, and he's absolutely dedicated to getting it done, and that's a really massive factor in the success. If you ever research ERP, project management success factors, that is one of the top ones. So you're very fortunate, even though you might not feel like it sometimes when you're in the firing line or something, but you know, having that support and somebody really backing it is a good thing. I've been on the receiving end too. Organization in the right place to embrace new technology, I think there's no doubt about that. You're ready for the change. And there's a newer workforce in some leadership roles, so I think that's a good thing. You got some new people in, and you definitely want the new system. So here's some expected benefits. There's improvement in business processes. A more robust HR system. I think some of your HR system now, it's folders and a big room with papers in it as well. And that's, you know, you're the first one. That's why they're really keen to get a new system, because they want to be able to have it electronic and you be able to access all your stuff as an employee too. So that there'll be some really nice benefits for us as employees if we get like a really cool HR system, which would be nice. A lot of self-service. You go on and see where you are with things, maybe track your training if that's possible, and look at all your details, and it's nice to have that. I've had that before, and it's a good thing. We'll hopefully have some integration and interfaces. Any systems or things that we have that we're not replacing currently, we would have hopefully some integration and interfaces into them. They're very difficult. There's usually problems. I'm not going to lie. That is going to be a problematic thing. It doesn't matter who you go with. Hopefully we won't, but I'm just saying, you know, expect some kind of pain there when that happens, regardless of how painless the vendor might say it will be. Reporting, we're hopefully, and that's a pretty big one, is that we'd have some more functionality, that you guys will be able to get what you need out of the system yourself without going to somebody else, and that it will be easy to create a report. I know sometimes report writing, especially in even new ERPs, can be very difficult, and I'd hate for us to get a system where you've got to go through a lot of training and need a load of support to get what you want. But some of the vendors who we saw for the meet and greets had really nice data visualization. You know, be on whatever screen you're on, and you press a little icon and up pops a nice graphic with all of the data right there. So no need to be exporting it to Excel and manipulating it. It's nice to have that real-time visual to make decisions. And that was even on the HR side too, not just the finance. Workflow and electronic signatures would be nice, to not more have any paper floating around the building and being lost. And the biggest part, well, I'm not saying things get lost, maybe they do sometimes, but that you know where the thing is. It's hard to, and I think that's why Jake started using the civic clerk to use for contracts, so that he could see where something was and who touched it last. But it's not really what that system was designed to do, and that's kind of causing a little bit of pain in itself. So that workflow would be nice. Things just route through to the next person for approval. In the morning you would have a nice work list. You log on to the ERP, here's my work list, go through the items, approve, and it's all moved on. And then if somebody hasn't approved it, at least you can see where it is and say, hey, could you approve that thing? If it's on somebody's desk or on transit around the building, you can't really do that. And more efficient use of personnel. People want to do their job, and unfortunately they're spending a lot of days, you know, manipulating spreadsheets and exporting, importing, cutting out pieces of paper even to stick onto spreadsheets. And I've seen it happen because that's the only way they can get things done. So that's not the most effective use of, and there's a lot of talent here and people, you know what they're doing. I've seen everyone's very skilled, and that would be nice when people can actually do their job properly without having to do all those things. And a reduction of shadow systems, and this one is probably going to be a bit contentious until you know, people really trust the new system and think that they don't have to track all these things separately. I'm thinking, especially with projects and things like that, tracking budget to actual on spreadsheets and all those things. Hopefully you won't have to do that anymore. But that'll be like throwing away the binky. So this is like organizational change management, what we're doing now, all the meetings and the process improvement teams and everything. So, you know, here we go. GFOA came in, told us everything. Here's the work, now go and do it. And we're like, what? You know, so here's the elephant. And the trick is, how do you eat an elephant? I have the answer, one bite at a time. So, and that's what the these teams that we're doing in the process, the PIT teams as we're calling them, they're really taking the bite. So, you know, if you break this up, and there's many different ways to slice up an elephant. I know this. No. But anyway, okay, one is the business process mapping and what GFOA did, and then we have the PIT crews evaluating GFOA changes. Maybe making decisions on what will move forward. You might hear a lot of discussions coming out of those PIT crews, but there is a process. We're not just changing things and doing things on the fly. We're trying to include people, make sure everybody has a say, and bring in. We brought Margaret in this morning for a discussion. She was very helpful. Thank you for that. And so as we're getting more into this and like getting into the meat of things, back to, I'm vegetarian, by the way, in case you wondered what goes on, we're kind of realizing how much more you start in, you know, taking the layers off, and you're like, well, we got to talk about this one a bit more, and you realize how much it affects other departments. And the selection committee will be reviewing and selecting vendors, and the vendor then will come in, like I said, and help the city build a new system, and then the end will be the training and communication and go live, and then you've got to have some controls in place to make sure we keep the elephant under control going forward, and you don't end up having to, in 5 years' time, have to do a big massive data cleanup and, oh no, the ERP got out of control. So that's how. So I hear a bit of this sometimes, is, oh God, we got to do this now, and I'm going to all these meetings, and I know it is a lot when you have a lot of work to do in your office, but to not do it is kicking the can down the road. It really is, and the further you kick it down the road, the more painful the ERP will be. So you're in good shape by doing all this stuff now, even though it might not seem like it at the moment. And I know sometimes it's frustrating, but it's okay. So here's kind of an example. You know, it's only gone 30 seconds. You come back, there's all the paper. And you're worried about getting your job done and making sure everything's tidy today, which is important, okay? We have to get our job done, but that ERP is coming, and there's no getting away from it. And then all of that paperwork and stuff you do, you're going to be trying to do it in a new system, and then it becomes even more difficult. And so taking the time of investment now in building the system and being part of those decisions makes it a lot easier when all of a sudden the reality hits, like, oh, now I've got all that stuff to do, plus I really don't know how to do it or why it was set up that way, and that can happen. And I don't want us to be in that position, or, you know, people to be panicking later on. So I know it's a hard balance to try and get all your stuff done and work on these things. So I was just going to do a little update on the PIT crews, and the reason I use the tortoise up there is that some of them are going like really quickly, and that's good, and then some are slower. But anyone who's in those, try and be patient if you're in one that seems to be moving a bit slower, because like I said, there's certain things that you start discussing that seem like a no-brainer. Hey, let's just do that, and then some might go, well, that really affects our department a lot, and we need to get these people in and those people in, and now we've got to look at a policy, and then it starts, as we know, Nadia had that with something she's working on today. So you start realizing. But what's good is there's a lot of collaboration happening, and the silos are breaking down, departments are working together. Not saying that they don't, but this is a very unusual situation to have this many different departments all in the room discussing, and lots of people have realized how difficult other people's jobs are. You have a different appreciation for what people do and how complicated their jobs are in their knowledge of what they do. And we're really doing some good process improvement things, and some of the things we can do now, but we're still going to bring them forward properly and make sure everybody understands the change. We're not just going to start throwing stuff out there, hopefully. Make sure I didn't miss anything on that. So yeah, at the pit crew meetings, I put out a survey, and thanks for everyone who responded. It was to people who were involved in those teams, and the feedback was very good. You know, most people think they're useful, some people don't. I get that's okay too. It's I think it varies between the different type of pit crews that you're on and what is going on with the leads, but just be understanding that those leads of those pit crews aren't all used to running meetings like this. We've asked them to step up and facilitate a whole group of people and all these new changes and recommendations, and some people that's really out of their comfort zone. So you know, just be mindful of the task that they're having to undertake, and I'm throwing them up there on SharePoint. Hey, upload your stuff on here, let's do this, put it all electronic, and some people aren't just used to doing that. So you know, kudos to everyone who's one of those leads, and you know, let's be supportive of them as well. So the output so far is that we're talking about less paper, less approvals, looking at the current security, and you know, that we actually realized that some people could have access to more things on the current system that might help them with their jobs. So Michelle's been working on that. You know, we're not making any big system changes, but hey, well, let's see if we give you access to this, does it make your job easier? And there's certain things that just got uncovered because of these deep conversations about, but you just don't normally talk about all that stuff, so it's stuff popping up. So we're noticing where there's communication breakdowns and the training needs, and how we can make things better for external stakeholders. And by that, I mean the residents of Port Orange, really, and businesses, people we do business with. Like Kristen from Utility Billing is really very focused on trying to make things better for the customers and for their experience, make things more fair for them, and make sure that we're doing things with the billing that's just a little bit easier on those folks. So I think that's a really big thing. If you're in a pit crew, IT is kindly helping us with going to provide some laptops for those meetings, and James has ordered a cart. Sorry, I was thinking to say trolley, UK. And it's got laptops on it that charge. So you walk in the room, you pull a laptop, and then you can log onto it. And I think the virtual desktop, if you pick the same laptop every time we could number them, means that it will mirror your actual computer at your desk. So it's a more, you know, nice experience. And I've asked for anybody who wants that, let me know. We're not just going to throw it out there for everyone, because there's quite a bit of setup for James to do. But if we know who wants to do that, then we can get you loaded up, ready to do it. So, and thanks to IT for that. So that'll be cool. And also everyone's learning a bit more, I think, about SharePoint and Office 365 by using it through this process. So that's a good thing too. Oh, by the way, there's a training for that tomorrow morning. What time is that? It's like 10 o'clock or something. Have a look on SharePoint for the SharePoint training. Okay. So it is a good opportunity for leadership. It's a resume builder going through one of these projects, whether you think it or not, it really is. Try and remain positive about it, and you know, even if it's a bit annoying in one of the meetings, if you go back to your office rolling your eyes and this thing's good, you know, and then everybody kind of gets that, and they start to feel the negativity ripples through, and it's a bit like a cancer. And so I'm not asking everyone to be overjoyed all the time over it, but I think if you're in one of those meetings, just try and remain positive and talk when you get back to your department about the good things that are coming out, and also make sure you talk to the department about things that are happening. And you know, try and be present at meetings and updates, because it is important. Cool. So I want to say thanks to the departments who have got staff on pit crews, and to the department heads, the leadership, the legal and purchasing especially, for helping with putting the RFP together. That was a very cumbersome task to get that done, and they were very, very helpful, and just everyone involved. So actually, there's something I want to read. So I'm going to read this out. This is something out of the surveys that I sent out. This is a response that somebody gave, and I think it's really good. And some of them weren't as good, but no, it's okay. But this kind of sums it up, I think. It's been an eye-opening experience to hear how much of your processes in the department can be negatively or positively impacted or impact another department. Most employees have been extremely open-minded to change and understand that the ERP process will have a positive impact on our entire agency. I believe a very important part of this process has been interacting with employees you wouldn't normally get the opportunity to interact with. Being able to put a face with a name and having more knowledge of what other employees go through on a daily basis should improve workflow and efficiency. This has been a positive experience, and I look forward to continue and contribute to the end product. Kudos to the ERP project manager. I'm not reading, honestly. And steering committee members and pit crew leaders. This is a taxing process, and I appreciate all the employees who've been and continue to go above and beyond the call of duty. So this came from one of the pit crew members. So I think that's a very nice message, and I had a lot of other good things about this, about the project. So I think feedback is important. I'm going to share the survey with you all. I don't like the idea of putting out surveys and not sharing the results, and it's sometimes painful to ask for feedback and have to take it, but we can't make things better unless we, and I've had some good suggestions of things we might better work on and make the process smoother, so we're going to implement those. I think that's all I have. Have you got any? I always manage to get a dog on there somewhere. Has anybody got any questions or anything so far? I mean, I hope that was useful in some way. And if you got anything that I didn't answer that you have a question on? Okay, that's good. That means I must have touched everything, or you guys can't wait to go. All right. Well, thanks for coming. Oh, Cindy, yeah.
So when you're doing the process improvements, and I sort of know some of the answers since you're in our department meetings, but some of the process improvements. Are some of those going to be implemented maybe before the ERP gets?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a good question, and it makes me think of something else I didn't mention. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we could do now, and the reason why it's good to do them now is, one, we don't need to be in pain when we could make something easy to make it easy for the next year. But two, it helps. You don't want to roll this whole thing out. Let's save up all these changes and then whammy everybody with the new software and all the changes when we roll it out. So if anything we can get knocked out now and communicate and make things a bit easier, we're going to try and do. So what happens is the pit crew, they have their recommendations. They send, when they're really ready to put something forward, they'll be sending it to me, and then I will send it off to department heads in the steering committee, who will make a decision on it if it's a go. And then we will then decide what kind of communication or training needs to happen to get it rolled out. So there will be things coming. An example this morning was a really good one, and tell me if I get anything wrong, Nadia, on this, but they were talking, and it's just a conversation, nothing has happened, but maybe about changing the billing frequency, because we bill every day. And we need to get more on a regular cycle of billing, perhaps. I mean, if it works for us. So we still got to work through a lot of things. But Nadia brought in Margaret, talked about how that might affect contracts and things. And Margaret said absolutely anything she can do to help make that happen. And, I'm not saying that will all go through. Who knows? There could be something pop up why, hey, that's a massive problem. We can't do that. But those are the type of things that we're looking at now, is thresholds and, raising thresholds of, maybe budget thresholds and things like that, and how many, why have we got 12 people approving this one thing? Maybe we could trim that down a bit. So, and that all goes through all the departments and everything. So, yeah, hopefully.
When you pick the three, then you said that purchasing and finance are first. But is it going to get out of here?
It's being recorded.
It's being recorded.
Oh.
I want to hear your question.
Oh, okay. Then we want to know when does community development come in that we're going to know this is compatible with us?
What they'll do
before the December decision.
Yeah, well, I've already been talking to Jen and Tim about this, and they're going to put their RFP together. They all have their requirements, so I think that's more of a conversation we'll have more with Tim and the steering committee about when the timing of that would be. I know you already had some people in before and had some demos and things, so yeah, I know what you're saying. There was at what point when we make that decision would we know, but I think you could start shopping before then, because we would have it narrowed down to maybe 3 people and say, hey, these are our top 3 vendors we're working with. We want your system to integrate with at least one of these. or you know, you would let them, you would put on your RFP, we're looking for an ERP, so we would expect it to be integrating.
So before it gets to December for the council, all the city departments will be, or it will work for all city departments?
What will work
This
for all
or
city
this
departments?
system when they choose one?
Yeah, we'll be
It won't
choosing.
just for the purchasing and finance?
Well, yes, it will be. We're just looking at the purchasing and finance part first. Now, some of the vendors have a community development solution, so you might be looking at theirs too. If you like that and you like the idea that we're using the same vendor for finance and HR, that might be something that you as a department say, yeah, we like that. It's all with the same one. We're going to go with that one. You might not like that solution that they have that was the same vendor as the HR and finance, in which case you'd be free to go off on your own, and we'd have to integrate the two. Yeah, but you have choices. I mean, that's something you'd be looking at, all those. Anything else?
Once the vendor is chosen and
Get the mic. Hold on, you gotta have the mic.
are we able to visit organizations and see how they work like we've done before?
Yeah. Yeah. You can go and do like a site visit. I think that's encouraged. Usually go and see who's got it, how it's working. Ask the people who do your job in that place, hey, how do you like this thing?
And can you do it ahead of time maybe? If you're
I don't think you've got any restrictions on you currently. I mean, I don't want to ask on behalf of Tim, but you could be going around 1,000 places because you don't really know what you're going to get yet. So you might want to narrow down your choices a bit more as to what you like. I think some people in your department did go into some site visits,
Yeah,
didn't
we
you
did.
already? I think you can do, but check with him. But yeah, and I think we'd probably be doing that with the ERP too. You go and ask them, you know, they will give you a list of people they tend to know, give them a good reference, and we're going to call the other people and go and chat with them.
so you are going to go.
I would think so, yeah. It depends on the proximity, if they've got any really close to us or not.
Is this usually a general consensus if everyone pretty much likes it, or if they don't like it at all? Usually. That's what happens in an organization.
Yeah.
They've all received it well.
Alan, have you got anything to add? You're looking a bit strange at me. Or is that... He always... No.
Hand on the mic.
He didn't really have a question, now he's thinking of one.
He's trying not to say something.
I think what we've found in research and talking to other people is most of the time the software can do pretty much anything, or it can do what it's designed to do. Generally, the failure of these type of projects is in the change management and the willingness of the organization to change and the ability of the organization to go through the change in the manner and the time in which we've given the project to succeed. So a lot of times when we would contact other cities about, do you like this, you know, when we were first thinking about it, do you like the software, do you not like the software? Sometimes you'll find they like one module and they hate the other one. Or one department's really happy and the other one is not really happy. Sometimes it's because what you find in the history of these ERPs, how they came about is you had a company who did financial software, let's say, and they're like, oh, you know what, we could make money if we integrate with this HR thing. So we're going to buy this company that does HR and we're going to put them together. And they weren't really the same software, but they called themselves the same thing. And after maybe 5 or 10 years, they really got it integrated, working well, and now it's a really good finance HR system. Then they realized, hey, we could do community development too. And it was a horrible community development thing, and then 5 or 10 years later, maybe it was actually something that worked because they were really integrating it with their system. So that's how these ERP systems came about, and that's why sometimes you see some people are really happy with some aspect and not so much with others. And the way we designed the RFP, we hope, and we seem to have had some good input so far, is that we're trying to get all kinds of ERPs to submit, regardless of, you know, yeah, we're focused kind of on HR and finance, but if you have the other things, we want you to bring those too. And so we'll have hopefully people that have everything, meaning more than just finance and HR, and those that just have finance and HR. And the selection committee will be going through and making that decision with the input of other staff. Is this the best thing, even though it doesn't do this really well, is this the best thing for our organization, or do we want to do just these and then go out for the others? And I think that's what she was getting to before, is we're going to see hopefully all sorts of vendors that come through. Selection committee will make that decision on which way we move forward, whether it's we're just doing HR and finance now, or whether the people that come to the table have everything and it works well enough for us to move forward with that.
Anything else?
Don't say.
I wasn't asking him, no. It's
Do not say.
Oh man, now you tempt me.
Come on.
Alan, this is being recorded.
Even better.
Oh.
Okay, I'll mention that. Yeah, well, Margaret just reminded me of something really important as well. This is, and I was going to mention this and I forgot, I'm glad she said this, that we are in this cone of silence still with the vendors. So on the site visits thing, you've got to be careful about that, because even though yours aren't necessarily maybe the full ERPs, you could be touching over onto certain vendors who we might work with. So although you could possibly talk to other cities, you'd have to be careful about getting in contact with any vendors or anything. So just keep that in mind, and we're in that for quite some time still, that cone of silence. So it's a good one to remember. All right, anything else, anyone? Well, I do appreciate you coming. Thank you. You only got to do this once every 3 months. I try and keep it a little bit entertaining. Thanks.